All right, I am here with CJ Graham, the great CJ Graham, Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. How you doing, CJ?
Hey, it's Kane Hodder, everybody. How you doing?
That's right. It was your birthday recently. Happy birthday, Kane. I think I
Kane's
left
birthday
you
was
a
in
message
January.
on.
Mine's in February.
Oh, yeah. I wonder how, I don't know if you know the rest of their birthdays, like the Jasons. I wonder if they like follow a pattern in some way. It'd be interesting.
You
But I
never
think the
know.
first question would be, after especially seeing all the movies in the intro, are you a horror fan? Have you always been a horror fan? Did you get into it later when you play Jason? Or give a little backstory on how you got into horror.
I'm a little older than most of your fans, so for
Yeah.
those fans, thank you for
Oh, I got
still
fans that
following
are,
me all these years.
yeah.
Um, but I'm old school. I love Universal horror movies, the black and whites.
Yeah.
Lon Chaney, Boris Karloff, The Mummy, Frankenstein. Those are all classics. If I'm
Oh,
going
yeah.
through the TV at night and the 1929 Frankenstein's on, I watch it.
My love of horror extends to all genres and years, but I liked it. Frankenstein's a classic. Dracula's a classic. I always like Creature from the Black Lagoon was my favorite Universal monster, but I don't throw them on too often. Kind of like anything like pre-50s, really. I don't throw on too often, but I mean everything from '60s going forward, I could usually find some type of entertainment out of. But with the first Friday film, I mean, starting the whole slasher craze of the '80s, did you see the first Friday the 13th when it came out? Or I'm sure you heard of it, but did you see it? And if you did, what was your experience watching it?
I never saw Ari's experience for his 3 seconds, 4 seconds of fame.
I know.
You know what? I mean, it's interesting because it didn't. I wasn't attracted. At the time, I'd only been out of the military even a year, so I was still kind of different after trying to deprogram after the
Oh,
military.
yeah, I can imagine.
You have to remember, I got the last couple of years of Vietnam, 74 to 75 through 78, the Cold War.
Yeah,
So I believe 1980 is when it came out. It really wasn't my
yeah,
genre yet. But at the same time, now that I've been blessed to be part of this genre, decades later, the Four Musketeers, I call it, which would be
yeah.
Freddy, Jason, Michael, and of
Michael.
course, Leatherface.
Yep.
Uh,
Don't
you
forget
know,
Chucky. He can fit in there too.
well,
He's not,
he's
he's not
kind
going to
of,
stand up to you guys too well, but
yeah, well, he's
he's
going to
there.
cut our kneecaps off. So, he's still got some room to grow in height.
Yeah, right. I think he's going to space in like next season on the show or something.
Yeah, you know
Something
what? But
crazy.
he's done it. I'm real happy for the actor and stuff. I see him all the time, and for them to get the reboot as
Oh
done in
yeah.
the last 18 months, give or take, that's amazing. I'm real happy for him.
So when did you first see a Friday the 13th film? Was it after playing Jason or before?
Before,
Guessing
and I say
before.
before because when I asked to come in for the part, I wasn't sure what that entailed exactly. So I went and watched part 4 with Ted White and part 3 with Richard Brooker just to get a baseline.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I got there, of course, Tom McLaughlin, the writer director, really wasn't trying to really connect, but they had to do something special after part 5. Too much psychology involved in part 5.
Yeah.
Jason is pretty simple. Let me just take your head and we'll move on. But
Yeah.
I do believe Tom McLaughlin had the vision of more of a universal horror Frankenstein, but he did
Oh
not
yeah.
want a robot. He wanted to have curiosity. And as the movie went on, the connectivity of the brain cells, that he was thinking a little bit and he
Yeah.
wasn't just walking
Well, that's
around like a
like
machine
that's
or
why
a
they
zombie,
never say flat out he's a zombie, or like
right?
people like to
Don't ever
refer to
say he's a
zombie
zombie
Jason.
because
But
that
yeah, I'm
wasn't
sure
the
Tom
intent.
didn't think of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was just his own. Jason came back to life somehow
right,
by the lightning rod, and that's all the explanation you really need. And I kind of prefer it that way.
right,
Like if they were just calling him, this zombie maniacs running around killing people in the movies, I wouldn't be happy with them calling Jason a zombie. So I'm
right.
glad that Tom left that ambiguous. And I mean, with part 6, he basically changed the course of the series by injecting a lot of humor into it. And I think that's why a lot of people's favorite is part 6. And it used to
I,
be mine growing up also. It's still in my top 3. So 4 is my favorite. I think it's the greatest slasher movie ever made. And then part 2, and then probably part 6 or part 3 would be tied together there. But those are my top ones.
Right. And when you meet me in the future, you may want to forget those comments just now.
All right. Well, I'll look forward to it. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
So you did your own stunts, obviously, as a stuntman as Jason. How do you get into doing stunt work?
So let's clarify a few things. Number one, I never went to Los Angeles to be an actor, stuntman, or any of the above in the entertainment field. I
Yeah.
actually went down there to look at entertaining LAPD or the sheriff's office.
Mhm.
Secondarily, when I did get the part, they had to tap Hartley me in, which means they had to pay a fine for me to get a Screen Actors Guild card. And up
Okay.
to the moment I stepped on the set, I had never been to stunt school, never done a stunt in my life.
That's amazing when I hear that, because stunts are phenomenal in that movie.
Right. So everything from being set on fire, half a burn, to 20 feet underwater,
I mean, talk
breathing
about
on
jumping
ventilators.
right into the stunt world, man. I mean, I salute
Yeah,
you for that.
yeah, going through walls, doors, etc. I
Yeah, it's
mean,
like,
it
all
was my
right, let's
first
do
time. I'd
this.
never
If we're
done
gonna
that.
do this the first time, let's just go all out. Light me on
Yep.
fire, throw me in the water, drown me, do whatever.
So I have
That's
to,
that's
when
great.
people say, even I did a panel one time with my buddy Kane and Steve Dash and Tom, and they're talking about their stunt experience, and it came to me, and I went, "What's stunt experience?" And I never
Yeah.
went to stunt school. And Kane was next to me. He goes, "What? What do you mean you didn't go to stunt school?" And I said,
Oh,
"I
we
never
just
went
found
to
out
stunt
then.
school." Then the three of them who were stunt men
You're like,
in the
shocked.
industry couldn't believe that I was doing everything I had done and never
Yeah.
done it even in practice except the first time on set.
I mean, I can believe it, because, like I said, it's impressive. Especially, I've seen the documentary on Kane, Hell and Back, which is, people watch this for the premiere. It's an amazing documentary on Kane Hodder, and I didn't even know some of the shit he went through earlier, and with the burn injury, almost died and all that and stuff. I didn't know about any. I heard about it, but I didn't know how bad it was until I watched that. It's a great documentary. So, chat, when you see this, definitely check out that documentary. What is your personal favorite, Jason?
Well, are there others? I thought part 6 was the only one.
I know they kind of tried to erase the other ones in the series from
And
history and cinema.
I have an attachment to part 7 because I was slotted for it originally, and I thought it had a unique twist.
Mhm.
I think it could have finished differently. That it could, but I'm more of a connectivity. I think we, as a community, have learned a lot after watching Harry Potter. That
Yeah,
if you can connect the dots, you can put together 15 to 17 in a row that have substance rather than all over the board.
yeah,
I
and
think a good example is Star Wars. You go back to
mhm.
the 70s when Star Wars came out, they've done so many reboots now to connect the dots from the show from
Oh
1970
yeah,
that
a whole
if they'd have
universe.
thought like Harry Potter and connected the whole thing, it'd be wonderful, as would Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
But to answer your question, I really had a good flavor for Ted White doing his job. He was very much as I am. You know,
yeah,
being coming out of the military, I'm a soldier. What do you want me to
yeah,
do? Got it. I'll take care of it. He
exactly.
was
And
very
Ted
animal.
White's he's my favorite Jason. Ted White. No
And
offense,
to be
I love
fair, the
you.
guy's done 100 films in his life. You know,
Yeah, yeah, he did a
uh,
lot.
no, I
He-
remember I was on a board with him one time, and he said he'd done over 100 films,
yeah,
and nobody knows him except for playing Jason, and he doesn't even have credits in the
yeah.
movie on part 4.
It's wild, right? That
Yep,
that can happen. And it's just like, kind of like the opposite of what you were just saying. That you never did went to stunt school or anything, but you
right.
nailed it in
And
that
he
movie.
took it. He took it
Yeah,
because his children convinced him to take it.
I heard he didn't have any, like, he did not have fun with Joe Zito on set, and he almost walked a few times. Which, I mean, I don't blame him. I've heard that similar complaint about Joe Zito in the past, but he's made great movies. So.
When I met with Tom, his vision was completely different. And as you indicate, a little bit of humor.
Yeah,
He wanted to just take the edge off it, but he also was told by Frank Mancuso Jr., that's Tom
yeah,
McLaughlin, was told that you couldn't make fun of Jason. And I think the nice thing about part 6 is a little bit of humor in it. There's maybe 3 or 4 swear words total, and there's no nudity.
yeah,
So
yep,
it is pretty family friendly, even
yeah.
with what little blood is there, because they cut the heck out of that movie as a
I know.
result of what couldn't be seen back in the 80s
Then
in
as they
comparison
went
to
on,
today.
worse with each
Yeah.
movie afterwards, it got worse.
So, and the interesting thing is the films that were done back in the 80s with 35 millimeter, everything went on the ground and
Yeah,
was swept up and put in the garbage. So you can't go back to digital to put something together,
yeah,
which would be a
that's true.
director's cut because it
Yeah,
doesn't exist.
we got some of the like uncut kills from a few of the entries. I know John Carl Beekler's uncut ones for 7 are in bad shape. Like they're very grainy. There's no sound really to them. We got some for 4, like a few years ago. We got 2 also. I don't think 3's cuts exist anymore, but I could be
Yeah,
wrong on that.
and they're grainy, like you said, the 35
Yeah.
millimeter or whatever. A lot different than they used in digital
Oh,
films
yeah.
the last 20 years.
The change of going from shooting on film to when digital got real popular, then just it must have been like the VHS, when VHS took over and everyone was renting videotapes. I guess people switched over. But
Yeah, and I can relate to VHS and what people do today with your telephone, which has much more pixels in it than a VHS did, and the
yeah.
simplicity of being cut, let's do it again and shoot in 5 seconds, rather than having to completely reset up everything again.
Oh yeah, I mean it does simplify the process for sure. But I was a Blockbuster kid, like late '80s, early '90s. That's when Blockbuster was booming, VHS was everywhere. So that's how I got in the horror genre. Just the VHS covers and shopping around, looking at them and stuff. It's just such a better experience, in my opinion, than what you have today. That you just like feel holding something, a cover and an actual tape in your hand, and looking at the art that somebody actually put a lot of creativity and work into to make that art. You don't have any of that
Well,
really today.
let's go back to basic education.
Mhm.
Basic. When you went to a Blockbuster as a 10, 12, 13, 15-year-old, you had to read the
Yep.
titles and look at the boxes to know what it's about
Mhm.
before you rented it. So there was an educational. You were practicing your reading, your spelling, and
That's so
information.
true.
Nowadays, you just kind of click through and pick stuff without knowing what you're looking because you really don't get connected to anything. You're just clicking through stuff,
There's
and you
just so
can.
much too. It's
And there's
such
too much.
oversaturation. Yep, there is. I say it all the time. I'm trying to pick a movie to watch and do a review or video on. I can't pick anything, man. There's too much stuff on just Tubi alone or Amazon Prime, and it's like after you
Like,
see a few hundred titles browsing through for a few minutes, like I don't know what I want. I don't even feel like watching anything now. There's too many options, and I can definitely see that because I have struggled with that often when trying to find something to watch. Now you owned a club, right? Before you played Jason and Six, a
I was a
nightclub.
general manager of a nightclub in Los Angeles. It was 15,000 square feet, 3 dance floors, big, 1,800 people on any given Friday or Saturday night.
That's
And
great.
I just happened to, be there when I got discovered to
Yeah.
play Jason in Friday the 13th.
So how did that come about? Did they were somehow associated with or knew someone working on the movie and said, "Yeah, you would be good for this," and
Well,
it
they
was
had
just like
on
something like
Thursday
that.
night, right? On Thursday nights, which is never a weekend, every night had a little different. The weekend carried itself.
Yeah.
Wednesdays I had rock and roll. Thursdays was the hypnotist show in which
That's
Jack
cool.
Lachlan, hypnotist, would get up on stage and put 15 subjects up there from the audience and put them
Mhm.
under and then have them do crazy stuff. He had brought in somebody to
That's
shoot
great.
it, a production company called Real Effects, REEL, Real Effects. Just happens Real Effects did all the special effects on part 4 with Ted. And they
Great.
said to Tom, we can put a breakaway screen and we'll have Jason come through and scare the subjects. And
Yeah.
in so many words, we'll put CJ's big butt in Ted White's wardrobe.
That's a great
And
idea.
when I came through, they just kind of dropped their jaw and they were going to cast me for Jason. So the rest is history.
That's a great story because that is hilarious.
The subjects that are able to go under hypnosis, he would
Yeah, it's
have
not
one guy get
everybody. Yeah.
he'd have a guy get pregnant and give birth. Now you can just imagine a guy on stage half out of it, but still there
Yeah,
and
still
going through a
moving and
birthing
working. Yeah.
on the stage. It was funny.
I mean, look at how far this series has gone. Like we're up to what, 13
Well,
movies or
here's a good
TV
example. Yeah.
series soon.
So 1986. Let's clarify this. Are
Mhm.
your fans over 18?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's just
So
not kid
let's
friendly at
clarify
all.
this.
This channel.
If I recall, there, young man, you said you were 35. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'll be
That
36 in
means you were
September.
still a sperm cell in your daddy's sack when this movie
In
came out.
'86. You were damn
There you
right I
go,
was.
buddy. See? So your dad was still out there just having a great time before and here you are talking to me. I mean, for me, that's an honor. Just so you really, where I'm going with that is we're talking over 3 decades and to have
Yeah.
somebody your age. I have people 8 years old come up to me at
Yeah,
conventions.
that's when I
8 years
started
old,
watching them. It was
and I
like
have people
Halloween at 6
70
years
years
old.
old. So
Yeah,
to me, it's an
exactly.
honor.
It goes
It's
across all
unexpected and
ages.
appreciated.
I vividly remember that watching the first time watching Halloween, and just the music, because I started playing guitar at like 12 years old. Years later,
Well, let me tell you about Halloween because I know the guys who played Halloween, and
yeah,
there's a little bit of a struggle back and forth. So let me
I'd love to hear it.
clarify about Michael Myers, okay?
I would love to
I just
hear
want
it.
to let
'Cause
everybody
actually,
know.
I don't
And
have a
Michael,
Jason shirt, so
no,
sacrilegiously, I'm wearing
it's
Michael.
okay. And I saw that, but I'm gonna tell you this because I didn't want to insult you on your own show.
That's all right, no problem.
But
I'll get to talk at some point in the next
real
minute.
men, we use a machete, not an Outback steak knife.
That's right. You know what? They don't sell machetes or provide them at the Outback or
So
Texas Roadhouse,
if
stuff
you
like
came
that.
up to
So if
my
they did,
if you came up to my table, I can't tell you how many times little people, 12, 14, and I've given them
I can
$20
imagine.
to go find a Jason shirt and come back.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean,
A
that's how
true story.
dedicated the fans are
Or
in
adults
this
like you, I
series.
tell you, you got to turn it inside out if you want my autograph.
It's amazing how, yeah, like you said, how this transcends and like a few other series in horror, like you said, like Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween and Texas Chainsaw and Child's Play. Goes down the list, but I mean, come on, Friday, Halloween, Nightmare, those are the top, pretty much the top dogs. I mean, the way it transcends age, race, anything, gender,
Well,
everybody who's a fan
there's
of
some
this
good,
series are huge fans of the Friday the 13th series.
right.
And it's an
There's some
amazing
good
community.
shows out there, JT, right now, and I wish them the same success that we've had. And what I mean by great shows,
Mhm.
Terrifier, Child's
Oh, yeah.
Play, whatever you want to put, Scream. The question is, in 30 years, will they
Hmm.
still have it? And if they do, they're going to be just as fortunate and lucky as I. You just don't know what's going to
That's
take
gonna,
off
yeah,
decades later and what's only going to last a decade. And I've been very
yeah.
fortunate. So I'm very appreciative.
No one can ever see something like this going the
No,
way it did with a
I
movie
call it,
series, a book series, anything like that. Because
I
everyone
call
I've
it
talked to
lucky.
about it, I had Lauren Marie Taylor from Part Two on. Same thing. I always just ask just for my own enjoyment because I know the answer is always going to be no. None of us saw this coming, or like how big it would get. Did any of you had like an inkling or feeling like at the beginning
Yeah.
of the series, that it was going to blow up? Nobody did because you can never expect that. So when
So
it happens, it's really magical.
I got lucky, is what I tell people. I was very fortunate, got lucky, and here we are over 3 decades later talking about it.
Yeah. And there will be, I'm sure there will be two people on a stream sometime in 30, 40 years or whatever the hell the technology they're going to be using then talking about it still. Because I don't see it going away anytime soon.
I live in a reasonably small town of 120,000 people, but if I go to Olive Garden or I go to Texas Roadhouse, or I've been walking
Great
across
stuff.
the parking lot at Albertsons, and a guy's coming up with a cart, and I think he's just going to give me his cart,
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, hey, aren't you the guy that played Jason? And I'm just like, okay, yeah.
yeah.
And I'm in a small town, let alone I've been to TSA in Atlanta one time, and the gentleman looked at my ID and said, "Hey, aren't you the guy that played Jason?" I go, "Yeah." I said, "Have you ever heard of Derek Mears?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "See that guy back there, the bald guy? That's Derek." And he
Oh, yeah,
called
he was.
Derek to the front of the line at
That's
TSA.
great.
This was years ago, but it was funny because he knew our names. He didn't know our
Yeah,
faces, but he knew the
yeah.
name.
And that's how like dedicated the fans are, the
Yeah,
hardcore
they
fans
are.
of the series. They know the names, we know the writers of the movies and the directors and all the behind the scenes and stuff. Like you just get so into it with anything that you love. But when you have something that transcends, like we said, just time and everything else, this is something that's not oft doesn't happen often,
Yeah, there's some
especially.
historical value. People still remember Linda Blair with her Exorcist,
Oh yeah, I
which
mean
is
that's a
always
classic.
stuck. Yeah, but there's a few, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to be one of a few group
Oh
of
yeah.
people that got this historical value when it comes to the horror genre and
Mhm.
the movie industry from something that was very unexpected.
I guess that adds to just the excitement and everything about it. It's just that it came out of nowhere that you didn't expect it. You didn't see it coming. It was just this nice, amazing, opportunity that dropped into your lap. and you killed it. Like,
And
let's
I
talk
always tell
Jason
people,
in
like,
part 6. Your just your portrayal. Now, I do have a question that you
mhm,
might know the answer to, because I rewatched it recently, and I always wondered with the yellow gloves. It's the only movie, I think, if I recall correctly, that had the yellow gloves on. Then they
mhm,
changed it to a different color, black gloves at 7. Was that just because they didn't want to keep doing prosthetics on your hands for the
correct.
zombie, not quote unquote zombie? Is
No,
that
there was
why?
a cost associated because the prosthetics on my hands when I
Okay.
got out
Oh,
of the
that is
grade
why.
were you couldn't do much with them because they were so bulky. So by just picking up Tommy's gloves, his
Mm.
work gloves, and putting them on, simplified the process.
This is another question I had from somebody. How was it doing your own stunts for the first time? Just like you said, you didn't have any, didn't go to school for stuff. So were you intimidated at all about being lit on fire? Would be something I'd be a little worried about. But that's me.
Well, I really didn't know about the stunts until it was time because I really didn't pay attention to the script. I
Yeah,
don't
it's like,
say
all
nothing.
right,
All I
guy with a
do is
mask kills people. I think I
exactly. So I didn't really pay attention. I just show up and they tell me what the scene was and
yeah.
give me some direction. But I'd only been out of the military a few years. Pretty healthy,
How long?
pretty
How long were you in the military for? I
four
forgot. I
years.
know I 4 years. Nice.
Mhm.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate
I
that
was
very much.
still pretty cocky, so to speak. Not that I am not cocky today, but in a
No, not at
humble
all.
way.
That's all right.
But I
I'm
was
not
pretty
either. I'm
cocky
not
and
either.
I consider myself in good shape. Like today's a
Yeah.
good example. I still weigh 245. I'm 6'3". I weighed 243, 6'3" when I did the movie. The only difference between
Yeah.
then and now, then I could tuck and roll. Now when I hit the ground, I go thump
Yeah.
because
I mean, it's a
there ain't
little
no
bit of a
tucking and rolling
sacrifice.
at my age. It's the oh that hurt.
I don't
But
want to. I
you
don't
know
want
what?
to.
I didn't have a problem doing them. It didn't seem they gave me what's called a stunt bump every time I did something. Every time I
Mm.
had to do it again or be set on fire again or whatever, I got more money, and I'm like, well, this is great. You know how
Yeah,
many
like
times
keep
will I do this
piling
today?
on that gasoline. Yeah.
Is this
Let's
let's
do this again.
light me up.
Yeah, let's do it enough
Every time I
six
went
times.
through a wall or a door, they paid me more money. They put cables on my back and jerked me back like when the shotgun hit me, and I'm like, well, this is cool.
Now, is
Um,
that? I don't know a lot with stunt work and stuff. And is that common with stuntmen? Like, do they get bumps for having to do it again and stuff? I'd imagine it
That's
happens
part of
pretty
their job.
often.
Every time they
Yeah,
do the
pretty
stunt
much,
again,
right?
they get a bump of extra money. They get
Really?
paid X, and then
So every time.
yeah. But if the shot's not a good shot, or they need a backup shot, or they don't feel it's clear, they do it again. You got to pay the
Mm.
stunt additional money for the next stunt bump. So for them, that's part of their
Wow,
business.
look what happened, sadly, with Kane. And I said I had no idea it was that bad until I watched that documentary. And just like, man, what they were so ill prepared at that hospital. I forgot where it happened and stuff, but it was in like a small town, right? And they weren't prepared for burn injuries, something
Reno,
like that. Yeah, but like, oh, what a shame that they even went that far,
yeah,
and he
outside.
had to suffer like that for
Yeah, he did it
months.
outside Reno.
And then they moved him to like an actual
They
like,
had to take him to San Francisco.
yeah, that's it's amazing that he's even still here. First of all, with that, and just what he's gone on to do too is just unreal by playing Jason, and then we have Victor Crowley. That's a newcomer to the slasher
Well,
realm compared to you
if you
guys.
if you know or your fans know anything about Burns, he hurts all the time. You got to remember,
I can
Burns'
imagine.
skin doesn't stretch and it doesn't perspire.
Yeah,
So he can't grow his muscle mass big because his skin won't stretch. It's very
yeah,
painful.
in
He
pain
can't grow in the
constantly.
sun either because it's very painful.
Sunburn. It's got to be. Yeah, that's rough. But I mean, the guy's always. Every time I've ever seen an interview of him, or I've seen a video of him, anything, the guy's always just the most happy guy, smiling on his face and stuff. So I mean, he deals with a lot, but he just always handles it well, I guess. Or I don't want to say get used to it because nobody ever gets used to that, but it never shows through him.
Right.
From what I've seen, and of course, you're never going to see somebody fully, especially from that perspective. But it always seems like he's just always in a decent, good mood and happy mood and stuff, despite being in pain, which I give
Well,
him a lot of credit for that.
he's very proud of his accomplishments with the Friday the 13th. And
Oh yeah,
secondarily, when you're on stage, that's when you turn everything on. It's when you
yeah,
turn the camera off that you can let your air out and go, fudge, I'm in pain. Give me another chair,
yeah, yeah.
etc. So, I mean, he's a pro. Guys, I'm 67. I believe he's a year and a half older than me.
Mhm. Yeah, he just well, what was his birthday? 2 days ago, 3 days ago, something like that.
I think it was in January, but you could be right if I'm mistaken. I thought
Yeah, I
for some
think
reason it was in
yeah.
January.
The other day was I saw it all over the internet. So I think it might have been the
Okay,
other day. And my daughter was born in February 25th.
she's cool.
Yeah, see. All right, so at least one of us is cool in your book here. We'll see
Well, it
how
ain't
I
you
feel
wearing
by
that
the end.
ugly ass shirt.
I said we'll see how I feel by the end of this. So when you had to kill people a lot throughout the filming of the movie. Now there were two scenes, if I recall correctly. The beginning with the horse from with the Welcome Back, Cotter. I always forget the actor's name, and Tommy Jarvis. Now that's not you in the grave, right?
The scene with the eyeball and the maggots.
Okay,
That's not the graveyard scene. That's just the
just
eyeball, the
that
maggots.
shot. Okay,
That's
that makes
Christopher
sense.
Swift.
That makes more sense.
I'm the one getting out of the grave. I'm the one in the grave. That
Yeah.
close up one shot. Now, for clarification, I was on set doing another thing, and Chris is a great guy because he did all my makeup for me. Just he's got green eyes like me too. So Chris
Okay.
just said, "Well, I can put the makeup around my eye, and we can get a second unit, do a quick shot, and save the time." So when people say, "Well, Chris was the graveyard Jason," well,
That's
not
exactly what
quite
I was
accurate
getting at.
because
That's what I was getting
he's
at.
not
Yep.
the guy stepping out, standing
Yeah.
up in the graveyard because he's small. He's a normal sized human being, 5'8".
See, I'm glad you clarified that because that's what
But
you do hear
yeah,
from
people
people a
say,
lot of
"Oh, he's the graveyard," but that's just
times.
people's. Yeah, he did the eye shot, and
Yeah.
then the
And
paintball. To be fair, where the paintball hits the midsection, most people just
yeah,
assume I have padding on because
yeah,
it's paintball. But that guy that was originally cast for Jason, that was the one scene he was in.
yeah.
He's a little thicker than me, to be
Yeah, I
fair,
know. We kind of dubbed him Fat Jason over the years.
and it's
Fan
not that.
base.
Yeah, but so he's a little. People just assume I'm more in padding. I say no, that was a different
Yeah.
guy, and he's a little thicker, and that's just they kept the scene because it was shot and it was already done.
Yeah. I mean, that makes more sense than to reshoot the entire
Right.
scene and the
But
effects
when
and
the
everything.
eye opens up in the graveyard, which is really he just laying there. He's not even in the graveyard. He's
Yeah,
just laying on
it's
a
like
black
a
tarp.
3 second shot or so.
Yeah,
Three, four
it's
second shot.
that's Chris's eyeball. He moves it left to right, and from that moment on, when you see the guy coming out of the grave, and that's me. When you see the hands opening up the coffin, you think it's Tom Jarvis.
Mhm.
Those hands are actually Tom McLaughlin, the writer director.
I love the little
Yeah,
creative touches that people
if you're
throw in.
driving a race car and all of a sudden they need a close-up POV of a foot on the gas pedal, and
Yeah.
your principal's not available, who's got a size 8 foot?
Yeah, exactly. Get that
Put him
foot
in.
in the air.
Put him
We
in
need a
the.
shot quick.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
I was driving the race car. No, you weren't.
yeah, and because let's be honest, I mean, especially in the '80s,
Right.
the main
So
driving force of these movies was money.
right. So don't take
It was
anything
all
away
about
from Chris. That is his
yeah,
eyeball. He's laying on a black tarp, and he's got maggot. Really does have real maggots on his eye, for the record. And they had a maggot
that's
wrangler with a Q-tip keeping him out of his eye when he did that.
really.
So
I
got to
think
give credit. Let's be
he
fair, but
oh
he's
yeah,
not
if he
really the guy getting out of the coffin and all that. He's just the eyeball.
that's how if he worked in a Lucio Fulci film, wouldn't have just been maggots getting brushed out of his eyes lightly and shit. Fulci probably would have just sliced his eyeball open or
Right.
something. He has an eyeball thing. But yes, that's great to hear that clarification because you hear that often.
It's very simply put. One, I'm the guy that did the coffin, Jason. Well, technically he's not in the coffin, but yes, he's in the coffin. But he ain't the guy getting out of the coffin. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
exactly. With the
So
iconic
he's not
shot when
doing.
he turns, or you turn around with
Yeah,
the
that's
part of
me.
the
It's
fence.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it's not. He's not being dishonest because
mhm.
he is part of the Jason from the coffin scene.
Yeah.
The eyeball.
People just assume, especially
Right.
those who don't know the technical aspects, I
Right.
guess, of
And
filmmaking and stuff, would just assume, oh, I heard that scene wasn't him. The whole scene's not him.
and JT, remember, perception is reality.
Yep, that's actually a mantra I use pretty often in
Yeah.
my head, and it does help. Like when you're in certain mind states,
Yep.
just like repeating some things over and over again like that.
But I
And
got some great pictures of Chris doing my makeup and stuff, and great special effects guy. He really is.
yeah,
I haven't seen him. Every once in a while, somebody will bring me something to autograph, and his name is on it. But
that's
I
cool.
haven't seen the man in 36, 37 years. So, but great guy. He was very helpful taking care of me on the set.
It's got to be a lot putting full prosthetics on you as Jason every single day you're
Oh
shooting.
yeah,
You know,
him and
'cause I
the
know
other
some
guys.
people with Robert Englund that some people used to do his makeup and stuff. Englund would get like kind of like I'm sure most of you guys did. After a while, how long? It's like, oh, all right, come on, how long we got to go now? I just want to do this and shoot. But like, how
Well,
many hours were you spent in getting made up?
well, that varied. When I did Highway to Hell, when I played Hell Cop, it took 5 hours.
Mhm.
When I did Friday the 13th, it took 3 hours. But once we got past the scene where the face is seen coming out of the coffin, I was
Okay.
able to wear a half a mask because the mask covered my face. The
Yeah.
hood was fit
Okay.
to my face. I would pull it right on, tight as could be. They'd blacken out my eyes so you couldn't see my eyeballs. They even
And
used a black nylon from girls' nylons and just glued it in the back of the eyes of the mask so you couldn't see through.
see, I wish actually they did that and had that creativity with some of the later Halloween movies because I don't like Michael Myers' mask in some of the later movies when you can see his eye around his eyes and his eyes fully, like they're too big. He's supposed to have the blackest eyes. It says it in the first movie. So you're not supposed to see Michael Myers'
Yeah, but
eyes.
you have to be fair to Michael Myers. Where did they get his mask?
William Shatner.
There you go. So it was just a Halloween mask you could pick up down at the store. You cut the eyeballs out, you pulled off the sideburns,
And
and
that's
there's your
and like
mask that was used in the first one.
and like you were saying earlier, like when we were saying, you don't know what's going to take off. They had the
So,
option between the clown mask and the Shatner mask, and they chose the
and
Shatner
now
mask.
the Shatner
And then,
mask made
yeah,
kind of,
you try to think and say, I wonder what it'd be like with the clown mask if they chose that. But you can't really picture that because
very,
he's so used to it, so iconic with Michael Myers' mask. But I mean, that's just another stroke of luck. Just probably back then it was just a quick decision. Like, which guys do you like best? You like this one, this one? No, that one painted white. That'll look creepy. All right, cool. Let's do this. And then look what it's become
yeah.
all these decades later. What was it like filming the kill scenes and like how hard did you go on these little teenagers, 20-year-olds and stuff? And you can be honest. You say you kicked their asses
Well,
a bit.
no, I have
Don't
to
tell
be
nobody.
these actors and actresses trusted me totally. Darcy DeMoss is a good example. I physically picked her up inside an area which was supposed to be the bathroom. I
Mhm.
held on to her and
Great
let
call.
her just kick the shit out of me
Yeah,
as best she could, and she wailed the shit out of me. But then
yeah.
it came to the scene where her face goes through the side of the
I
motorhome.
love that shot.
She physically let me take her. I took my mask off. She let me take her face, her head, physically and hold it and throw it into a camera
Wow.
lens and stop. She let her head go. And my point being, she trusted me.
Yeah.
Taking the girl out of the window, I physically picked her up out of the window.
I did
The
not know
same,
that actually. That's interesting.
physically
That's
picked
cool.
her up out of the window. All
And
right. So,
it's
and
great that they trusted you that much. To
yeah,
know that you knew what you were doing enough to you're not going to hurt them. You're not going to throw a face in front of a camera and hit the
yep.
camera lens.
When I threw that knife into his skull, up
Yeah,
until about 3 inches, that's a real knife. He let me take a real
really.
knife. That's why you get the shine, lunge it at his head, and stop.
I think it also shows through and just from talking to you and seeing some interviews in the past, is just you're down to earth, cool guy. So I mean,
Yeah,
I could see
I was
them
doing what I
fully
had to
trusting
do.
you with stuff like that. Like, you seem like a trustworthy. You could be a crazy motherfucker outside of this. I don't know,
Right.
but you seem cool here. I can totally see them. And like I
So
said, I've heard other Jason people who've played Jason have similar words about the actors and actresses that they worked with.
the actors and actresses in the Friday the 13th, to be fair, in the Halloweens, um,
Not together often.
they're all of them. I don't care which one. I mean, Leprechaun, you've
Yeah.
got 8 actors now that have come out of these. They were barely in the beginning of their career. I mean, you take a look at, like I said, even Leprechaun with Jennifer Anderson. You take a
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at Friday the 13th with Kevin Bacon.
Kevin
I mean,
Bacon,
I can go through a list of people, that
Johnny Depp
started,
in Nightmare on Elm Street. Johnny Depp.
right? All of them.
Yeah.
You take a look at
Oh, there's a
what's
lot of
a
ones.
lot of
Brad
them.
Pitt. Brad Pitt was in a cutting
Horror
crew, a
movie.
cutting class. What's that? George Clooney was in Return to Horror High for like 3 minutes.
Yes, he was.
Do you know Return
You
to
know,
Horror High? You're cool in my book now
yeah.
officially.
Don't forget
Especially
about Johnny Depp. Here's the thing, for your fans. Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director of Part 6, has written a new Friday the 13th, Part 13, Jason Never Dies. If he can get it on with the two partners, Cunningham and Miller, that want to argue the point,
yeah.
that's fine. It's their prerogative. However, whoever decides to do the next Part 13, I hope, as I said earlier in this interview, that they've learned from franchise like Harry Potter, that you put together 3 in a row, use the same Jasons, different directors, scripts have to marry into each one of them to carry over. So the storyboard and the storyline from Part 13 forward has substance rather than, well, I'm going to space. Hey, I'm going to go to New York. If they really thought it through, they would put together, you already got the set out. So, but you shoot 3 of them, get it over with in 4 months, put 2 on the shelves, release 1. 12, 14 months later, release the second one on the shelf. 12, 14, the next one on the shelf.
Yeah, and they know they got money sitting there on the shelf for those next
the
2.
Connectivity of my point being that Part 6 should have flowed into Part 7 better, which should have flowed into Part 8, where there was something other than, well, what's going to happen today?
And then we got time jumps like that go years and make
that's
all
just
this
it. And all of a sudden,
weird.
To be fair, when Derek Mears did a great job, but since when did Jason get methodical?
Yeah.
How did we get there is my point. Now, if we'd have carried through and he had got to that through the series, that's different. But didn't he just come out of space? My point is, it's all
I get what you're saying. If you saw that gradual change, and they had that
fine,
planned in a way, at least a little bit of framework of an idea.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying.
But I'm hoping Tom McLaughlin gets a shot. He deserves it.
I think he absolutely would.
It's tough for Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Miller
because they don't see eye to eye because of all the.
And it's too bad. Remember, I ran casino resorts for 25 years. I was a chief operating officer, general manager. What that means is I ran $1 billion casino with over $500 million in revenues, over $100 million in payroll with 2,300 employees. I can run a business.
I can't imagine.
Point being, sometimes people forget where they came from. And I mean this. And I mean this respectfully to Mr. Miller and Mr. Cunningham.
Of course.
You guys forgot the hundreds of millions that have been made off this franchise is the fans. The only person taking a beating right now is the fans. They're the ones that put you in this position that you could argue about who owns what. But don't forget why you're arguing. It's the fans that got you here. You got lucky. We got lucky. And if they could just come together, even if they just split everything 50-50, there's hundreds of millions of dollars sitting on the shelf right now waiting for Part 13.
Yeah, I mean, look at just what happened to the video game, because I played that when it first came
out. Yep, and as soon as it started making money, they cut them off.
So shut it down, and we were supposed to get Grendel and the spaceship.
Yeah, I understand Mr. Miller. I understand Mr. Cunningham, and I respect them from a business.
You can see both
sides.
Appreciative
that I got to be part of it, but let's remember why I'm talking to you, because of the fans.
You worded it beautifully just now.
The fans. Don't ever forget how you got here. Don't ever forget where you came from. I ran casino resorts. I was very fortunate that I made it that high in the empire. All right. Yeah. I have a high school diploma right next to my college degree, which is a 4-year honorable discharge from the military. I never went to college. But I do tell people I have a PhD in common sense. As we're winding down here, I've got horses to feed, just so your fans know. I live in Montana. I got a small ranch, me and Ruby. And I've got horses to put to bed. I got alpacas to put up.
I can't thank you enough, man. This has been such a great conversation.
First and foremost, the fans out there, apologize that I messed up a couple times. I do have a heart. I am passionate, but by no means was it my man's fault. One crazy man is the best, and I appreciate you guys coming in to listen to us tonight.
Thank you so much for coming on and just giving your time here.
I sit right next to Tyler Main and everybody, and I harass him so badly. Kane Hodder doesn't even want to sit next to me anymore. We're best of friends. Just, I can honestly say of all the Jasons, I know Kane has a much more affection towards me. But, Kane's always late. He's an hour late to the show every night. And I tell the people in line that he's constipated. He's upstairs. He'll work it out. He'll be down, right? And if he's late the next day, I'll autograph a bunch of my pictures and put them into his.
That's
so
awesome.
when somebody takes a picture, the next one is me
Yeah,
autograph. I'll
that's
hear
great.
this CJ you across, you know. Well, he doesn't like
That's
to be too
great.
close to me. I throw paper at him.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
he knows at this point, like, all right, if I keep my
it's
distance,
me.
then maybe
It's
things
his,
won't be as chaotic.
yeah,
So
it's his twin brother, and I love him
that's
for it.
great.
I mean,
I think it's a
he's been
great
a great, great ambassador for Friday the 13th. I mean that he's worked
yeah.
his buns off for the
Oh
last
yeah.
30 years doing this, more shows
Yeah.
than anybody, and helped put us on the map. And I'd say one of the success stories is him being an ambassador out there, meeting people all the time that then want to see the movie or other parts of the movie,
Just
and then
from
meet the
meeting
other
him.
Jasons.
Yeah, and
So
just
I
I
give him
feel
a lot of credit for what he's done for the last 30 years doing these
oh
shows
yeah.
that have now become
Conventions
everywhere,
nonstop. I mean, I'm going
everywhere.
actually. I haven't been to a convention in forever. So I'm
Yeah.
going to Jersey in a week for
Okay, good.
just the Saturday. But Kane's there. Felissa Rose is going to be there, which I've been talking to her of having
What a
her on.
sweetheart, Felicia. That another one
Yeah, she's
out
so
there
great.
all the time.
Yeah, she's such a sweetheart. We've been
So,
going back and forth the last few weeks because I had Parry Shen on, and she was Victor Crowley with him. So I love their dynamic, and then I obviously love Felicity from Sleepaway Camp and a million other things. And
well,
she
when you see
got a hold of her.
Kane, tell him that
I
Elias
absolutely.
Voorhees is
Elias Voorhees.
challenging Victor to a duel.
You did two of the fan films, right?
Yeah, I did
And you
two
played
independent films,
Elias in one of
Friday
them.
the 13th Vengeance and Vengeance
Vengeance
2,
and Vengeance.
in
Okay, yep.
which I played Elias Voorhees, Jason's father, with very long hair. I grew a beard for 6 months, kind of looked like a Viking, backwoodsman, and taunting my son
I think it's one of the
Jason.
better fan films.
But I just think
Absolutely.
I don't think Victor can take Elias Voorhees. Tell him I said that.
All right, I got both of them in my head.
Make
It'll
sure
be
you stay a
next week.
distance from him so he can't get a hold of you in case he
I
gets.
know he likes to do that. Yeah, I know he likes to do that. Which
Give
is
him
it?
some love for me. I do love
Oh,
him. I think the
absolutely,
world of
CJ.
him, and tell
That's
him I
why
look forward
before
to
we
seeing
went,
him
I
soon.
brought him up and said I want to talk just your friendship with him because I know how
Yeah, I
he
look
is.
forward to seeing
I
him.
know.
Tell him I said hi, please.
I absolutely will.
Thank you for having me back. I apologize again for
Oh, no,
screwing up
no worries.
twice.
This made up for all of it, so don't worry. We're
All
cool.
right, get a
I'm
new
gonna end this
shirt.
recording here.